So when I think about lessons learned and the things that we're doing, I can certainly speak to my own experiences, but I'm particularly thrilled to not just have to speak to my own, but as we look at the work that is going around the world, we find amazing examples which are not yet existent in all parts of our globe, but certainly hold themselves up as important examples. And in fact, if we all unfortunately remember this Cyclone Sidra in November of 2007, and we look at what happened in that situation where there were 40,000 government personnel who were complemented by 30,000 Red Cross staff and volunteers who were able to get the word out to evacuate areas which would have been devastated and many lives lost, which were devastated and many lives would have been lost if it hadn't been for the response of that partnership between government and the Red Cross. But just as I think about our recent plane landing in the Hudson River, this situation of being able to save all those lives was not a miracle. It was the result of hard work, planning, and practice before events happen. And in fact, Bangladesh has a cyclone preparedness program that incorporates the efforts of government, business, and the Red Cross into making sure that people know what to do when they need to get out the warnings, and that the citizens know to pay attention and to do what they've been instructed to do when in fact those warnings are given. So I think that we can find these examples, just as you're doing today, the focus on water security. You can find the examples of good practice, but we have a lot to do to share them with all that need to learn about them. In addition to what we do locally, whether it's in Bangladesh or here at the American Red Cross, in getting ourselves ready for the disasters that might occur, we also rely on expertise that can come in from the Red Cross to help us. And one of the critical units we have is the Emergency Response Unit, which has a water and sanitation component. And so that we know we can bring expertise to the location of a disaster to rapidly deal with water sanitation, to allow a community to return and be able to reestablish their lives. And so this complement of local expertise and expertise that can come to the situation both exists within the Red Cross, and clearly is the direction of WSMART in being able to share those practices and expertise. For my own personal experiences, certainly I was here in the city for 9/11, was part of the Katrina response. I saw and watched from a distance the impact of the tsunami. I don't think it's surprising to any of us that we have to say we were not ready. I sometimes think that that lack of readiness was almost a lack of our being able to imagine that something of such magnitude can happen. But now we don't have that excuse anymore. I think that we know what can happen, and now our job is to get ourselves ready from whatever aspect we come from. When I think about more recently my participation in the response to the last hurricane season in our country, and even something as local as our power outage here in Queens that left 100,000 people without power for almost 9 days, I think I can speak to some of the things that I've seen in terms of improvement, but also continue to speak to the gaps that we have. So what were some of the differences? Certainly as we look to Katrina, the issues of evacuation were serious. Was the community prepared? Did it know who to listen to? Did it know how to listen in a way that would provide safety and security? And I think we clearly would say not enough, that we could do better. And so I was very happy to see as we went with a team from New York to run the mega shelter in central Louisiana to receive the evacuees of the Gulf Coast for first Hurricane Gustav and then Ike, that with Hurricane Gustav, there was a plan to evacuate. There were vehicles in which to evacuate. There were instructions that people followed, and in fact, people did evacuate. However, they got on buses for 12 to 24 hours without their medications, without water, without food, and arrived at our location with a good number of people having to be immediately sent to the hospital because their condition had deteriorated, and that was not necessary. They also came to stay in a shelter with us for a week, having been instructed to pack light, and so therefore didn't have clean clothes, didn't again have medications, and so they were safe, they were evacuated, but they were not prepared. Interestingly, on that one, Ike, they went home and then had to evacuate again for Ike, and they came back prepared. I do hope, though, that we all don't have to personally go through a disaster, that each of our communities, each of our countries don't have to experience the downside of not being prepared before we're willing to step up and actually get prepared. In terms of our own organization, we have much work to do in capacity building. If we have now communities that think about their own preparedness, if we work now as government and private organizations like the Red Cross to do what we need to do to respond, we need to get up our level of response capability, and we, again, are not there. What do we need? Again, more trained volunteers. As we met with our colleagues from London and Madrid, they had the same experiences we often have. Everybody wants to volunteer the day of or the day after the disaster, but they are not trained. They don't know how to run a shelter for 3,000 people. They don't know how to get help to the communities. They don't know CPR or first aid. And so we must engage our communities in allowing for volunteerism. And certainly in this country, I am very excited that whether it's in with the address of our new president at his inauguration, our State of the State address by our governor, our State of the City address by our mayor, volunteerism and community service are now taking a much higher profile than certainly I have seen in many years, and that is a very positive goal. We also, though, need to work with government and private organizations, because having volunteers is great, but it's not free. And I actually use this as part of an apology, because I'm going to have to leave you all before the panel is all over, because one of our major funders, Bloomberg LP, requires me to be at a meeting at noon. And so just as we have someone who pays attention to his board members, you have someone who pays attention to our funders. But we have many more resources that we need to bring to bear if, in fact, we're going to have an adequate, trained volunteer corps properly supplied to respond to the disasters. And so, in closing, I just would like to say, from my view, we are, in fact, from the lessons we have learned, getting better here in New York, in our country, around the world, but we are not yet ready. And we are not going to get ready if we only work within our own organizations or within our own silos of not-for-profit organizations, government, business organizations. It is only going to be through collaboration, for conversations like the one that's going to take place today, that we have a chance of actually accomplishing the goals that I think are appropriate and that we certainly have all set out for ourselves. So again, congratulations to all of you who have pulled this wonderful session together, and I look forward to at least hearing as much as I'm able to before I have to leave. Thank you.